This episode of Going in Raw is sponsored by Liquid IV. The holidays are nearly upon us, and with them comes travel and a marathon of family gatherings, so be sure to stay hydrated through it all with Liquid IV.
One stick of Liquid IV and 16 ounces of water hydrates better than water alone and gives you 8 vitamins and nutrients, plus 3 times the electrolytes of the leading sports drink, so you can stay hydrated amidst all the road trips, family get-togethers, and holiday parties.
So tear, pour, and live more and stay hydrated through the holidays with Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use code RAW at checkout. That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code RAW at liquidiv.com. Hey, Friendo, Steve here.
Hey, Larson.
And welcome back to Going in Raw, the only pro wrestling podcast you need to be listening to. On today's Countout edition, we're going to be looking back in honor of the 17th anniversary of Survivor Series 1997 game. Isn't it?
No, It's been longer than 17 years. Try 27.
Oh, oh my God. Yeah, it was so long ago. We're so old. In my mind, I was like, wait, did I get the 7 part right? And I was like, yeah, but add another 10 to it, you idiot.
Decade.
Oh, man. The Survivor Series 1997. What was Survivor Series 1997 most remembered for, Larson?
Gang rules.
No, the Montreal Screwjob.
Oh, that's
at the
right.
end, where Bret Hart, we're going to talk about that one on this list because we're going to talk about 10 times when keeping it real went wrong, and it's legit screw jobs in the history of pro wrestling. And shout out to Pro Wrestling Stories. Shout out to Dave Meltzer and the Wrestling Observer newsletter. Shout out to, I think there's a Pro Wrestling Bios video.
There is. There's a lot of great resources out there to learn about the wild and weird history of the professional wrestling industry. We're going to talk about a few of these stories here about legit double crosses.
You know, man, maybe
backstab.
I'll put...
Actually, there's no actual physical stabbings in this. No, there is.
There's a guy who got stabbed. Yeah.
Yeah, there is a stabbing in this.
There's also a bite. Maybe for this episode, I'll take all of our sources, all the articles and videos that we watched and read. Maybe I'll put them in the description so you guys can check that out for yourself. Because here's the thing: there's a couple of content creators, like video creators, that we watch their videos that, like, probably in my estimation, don't have enough views. So if we can shout those people out, I think that'd be pretty great.
Absolutely.
So yeah, man, double crosses, legit screw jobs, what have you. Let's go ahead and dive into them. First up, number 10.
10.
Shane Douglas and the ECW title. Oh, man. Screwing over the NWA. This NWA president fella seems like a real so-and-so, Larson.
Yeah, Dennis Coralluzzo, I believe is his name. So this is 1994. At this time, the NWA, it didn't really mean anything.
It had been like 7 years since WCW basically took the NWA title and was like, "This is ours now.
Yeah.
We're gonna make this. This is now the WCW title. You don't get it anymore."
Yeah. Later, National Wrestling Alliance. So 1994, the NWA decided, with the help of Jim Crockett, we're gonna kickstart the NWA again.
Well, yeah, it was. I think, wasn't it like right when WCW was like, this title is officially formally ours, that the NWA was like, hey, we actually need a title.
Yeah,
so they were going to bring back the 10 pounds.
10 pounds of gold, yeah. So they decided they're going to hold a tournament to crown a new NWA champion. So I guess Jim Crockett, friendly with Todd Gordon of Eastern Championship Wrestling, they had a TV deal. So the decision was made that they would host this tournament. And the NWA committee selected Shane Douglas to be the new champion coming out of this tournament. Well, Dennis Coralluzzo took issue with that. Apparently went on Mike Tenay's radio show and called Shane unreliable.
Wow.
Said he stiffed him. Don't book him.
Yeah.
Shane didn't like that.
No.
Apparently this NWA president dude as well was all in Todd Gordon and Paul Heyman's business. trying to put this tournament together.
Yeah, he
So
wanted to be
apparently
there in
he
person,
alienated
man.
everybody that was going to be involved in the booking of this thing.
And what's funny is that was this this was a Pro Wrestling Bios video
yeah.
that we watched. And I like this because like the committee chooses the champion. What exactly does the president do of the NWA exactly? Not
apparently it causes a lot of headaches for other people. If this video is to be believed. I don't know exactly. So the finals of this tournament, Shane Douglas, Too Cold Scorpio. Shane wins. And I believe Dennis Coraluzzo is either in the ring or ringside for this, all going down. So Shane gets the title, he grabs the mic. I'm sure by now, basically everybody's seen this promo where he talks about the tradition of the NWA Championship and some of the great champions of years past. Said they can all kiss my ass. He throws the title down. He gets the ECW Championship, the one with Pennsylvania and New Jersey and Delaware on it. And he declares himself the ECW champion. And it was the moment that it started the process, at least, of Extreme Championship Wrestling being born. Because it was shortly after this that Todd Gordon announced that, because apparently this president of the NWA was trying to strip Shane Douglas of the ECW title.
the thing that I love about this is they actually coaxed him into, like, he went backstage and they had some cameras waiting there, like it was like real news cameras or something. He was thinking they were real news cameras, and he was like, "Oh, we're gonna make sure what they did here cannot stand." And they put that on their own TV show and had Todd Gordon respond to it.
Yeah. So in the response, Todd Gordon says, "We're leaving the NWA as of noon of that day. NWA Eastern Championship Wrestling gone." Replaced with ECW
Extreme
Championship
Wrestling.
And the Hardcore Evolution was born.
The thing that I love about this is, like, the NWA was such a non-factor at this point. Todd Gordon, and I didn't know that Todd Gordon, and I think I had known this before and I forgot it and I relearned it thanks to this video, that he had like a family jewelry empire there in Philadelphia. Right. Yeah. And so he bought a promotion called Tri-State Wrestling, turned it into Eastern Championship Wrestling. And he had, when you say they had TV exposure, Eddie Gilbert was able to get them time slots on a Philly sports channel on cable. I mean, it was like Sports One Philadelphia, I think it was, which sounds like a cable channel.
Sounds like a cable. Yeah.
So like a local cable channel. And so that's why Eastern Championship Wrestling was the grounds for this tournament, because they're like, well, nobody else has TV anymore because Vince basically ran everybody out of business, took away everybody's TV spots. But this Philly promotion, they got TV, so we'll use them. So it's like Todd Gordon sitting there like, why is this president guy getting all up my ass? Yeah, what happened if we just decide to not be part of the NWA? Nothing. That you'll just be your own. Like, what benefit do they get out of being in the NWA? Seemingly none whatsoever. Yeah. They have the power because they have the Philadelphia Sports One channel. And so I could just imagine, it's like, wait a second. So they don't actually, they can't actually do anything to us? No. Okay, well,
it's a toothless organization, NWA is, so to say. Like, what are they going to do? Find them? No,
they can't do that.
They ain't got the means to do that. No, not at all. I mean, it's like I guess if you're part of the committee, if you join the NWA, like, do you have to sign a contract to remain in the organization for X number of years? Or is it kind of like, well, I don't want to do this anymore, I'm out?
Sounds like it, yeah. I am kind of curious if there is paperwork, or if it was like, because how did they refer to it when they left the NWA? They
he just said at noon today, I've dissolved NWA Eastern Championship Wrestling, and instead this is Extreme Championship Wrestling.
Do you think there is any actual paperwork involved in dissolving the NWA?
Do you think there's any actual paperwork establishing NWA Eastern Championship Wrestling?
No. It's like Todd Gordon Jewelry Associates, LLC.
Yeah.
A subsidiary of.
So after Shane Douglas threw down the title, talked a bunch of crap about NWA, NWA decided, well, we still need a champion. So they had another tournament later on that year in 1994. Chris Candido won that.
That's right, Candido. Yeah, he was the new 10
And he would
pounds of
eventually
gold.
join Shane Douglas at ECW.
Yes, he would. Yeah, he'd
As
be
a
part
member
of the
Triple
triple threat, baby.
Yep.
Oh, man, that's great. What a great story. All right, man, let's move on to number 9.
9.
This is Frank Gotch versus George Hackenschmidt, man. Hackenschmidt Gotch, a rivalry for the ages. I think the first World Wrestling Championship was awarded to Hackenschmidt in 1905. And back then, of course, you know, these matches were probably horribly long and boring. And it featured all sorts of, like, you know, catch can bullshit.
It was just it was just a couple dudes rolling on the ground. That's really what it was, I think.
For like 3 hours, man.
For 3 hours. Maybe they'll get up, do it all over again until someone can get enough leverage to get an advantage to score a pin. That's what it sounds like, honestly. I read... We're going to talk about Ed Lewis a lot in this episode.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
I read about a thing that he was in a match that was over 5 hours long.
God. And you know the seats weren't comfortable back then?
No, they're all wooden and stiff.
I got a splinter I'm sitting on for 5 hours.
They didn't have any padding on them. Anyway, so this is the rematch of Gotch and Hackenschmidt in 1911.
Yeah.
So apparently by 1911, Hackenschmidt's body has started to break down on him. Mm-hmm. And there is some dispute as to whether... Ad Santel, who was training in Hackenschmidt's camp, was paid to injure George's knee, or if it's just wear and tear. Nonetheless, Hackenschmidt went to this rematch with Frank Gotch with a bad knee. And so apparently there was... Hackenschmidt wanted to pull out because of the injury, but because the ticket sales were so huge, apparently it was like would have been comparable, adjusted for inflation, $8 million gate. And this is as of 1997 when Meltzer's writing this. So
oh,
it's
wow.
So huger
it'd be
now,
like 80 million now. It'd be,
exactly.
It'd be like 40 million in 2019, 80 million now.
Yeah. So apparently the deal was Hackenschmidt wanted Frank Gotch to at least let him win a fall, make him look good, but Gotch would walk out the victor, and Frank Gotch gets in the ring, goes, nah.
That's not going to happen.
Doesn't work for me, brother. Put a couple toe holds on you.
Yeah.
I'm going to walk out of here up 2-0.
Yeah, let me mess with that knee. Oh, blowing the knee a little bit. Oh.
So I found this quote from Pro Wrestling Stories. This is from the Reno Evening Gazette, apparently 3 days before this is reported at the time. So, quote, 3 days before the match became evident that something was wrong, there had been an abortive effort to put across a great betting coup, and the public refused to come in. So apparently this is when you gamble on wrestling.
Yeah, so it was super shady back then because like as we know, they were like, "Hey, brother, let me get one of these falls here, make me look good." They were fucking working this shit, and you got to think probably some gangsters were making huge fucking money on this gambling shit, man.
Yeah. So the report continued. This is from, again, Pro Wrestling Stories. Quote, the rumor persisted that Hackenschmidt suffered from a badly sprained leg and had to agree to wrestle only if Gotch did not touch that leg or use the famous toe hold. Friends of the promoters angrily denied this. Nonetheless, I think Gotch went after that leg.
While like just oodles of dollar bills were falling out of these promoters who were angrily denying it.
Yes.
Out of the pockets of these promoters.
And I think this was Hackenschmidt's last match, if memory serves.
Oh, that wouldn't surprise. Yeah, that would bum me out. I'd be like, I'm out of here. This business sucks. Not for me anymore, brother.
Doesn't work for me, brother.
Sorry, Hackenschmidt. Yeah, pretty interesting stuff. And given the history between these two guys, it's kind of fucked up. It's like, hey, man, we put pro wrestling kind of on the map together. But back then, man, I was telling you before the cameras rolling, man, I think if somebody ever to plunk down some money for like an HBO show.
Oh, yeah.
About like the early days of like the first 30 or so years of pro wrestling. God damn, there's some interesting stuff going on there.
This is just scratching the surface on some of the fascinating stuff. So apparently this was Hackenschmidt's last match. He was training to face someone we're going to talk about later, Stanislaus Zbyszko, but his knee was just in such bad shape that he retired instead.
Yeah, man. What a bummer. Before we continue on, man, why don't we go ahead and pay some bills, Larson?
Let's do it. Let's take a break here. Get a word from the sponsor of today's show, Liquid IV. Steve.
Yes.
This time of the year could be a real whirlwind.
Yep.
Because with the holidays comes travel and family gatherings, and amidst all of the craziness, it's easy to forget to take care of yourself.
Which is why I always keep Liquid IV on hand, Larson, so I can stay hydrated through all the road trips, family dinners, or parties that the holiday season can bring. 1 stick of Liquid IV and 16 ounces of water hydrates you better than water alone and gives you 8 vitamins and nutrients, plus 3 times the electrolytes of the leading sports drink.
And not only is Liquid IV an essential part of the holiday season, it's an absolute must for us when we play our semi-weekly basketball games. Here's the deal. Our hoop season, it never ends.
Never.
Endless grind.
Always.
It's the battle of attrition that's going to go on for probably the next 40 years between Steve and I.
Hoop forever.
Exactly. And without Liquid IV, I don't believe we could keep up with this grind to play 2 times a week, every week, for the rest of our lives.
That's
and
correct.
I need it because I want to shoot those deep threes. I want to
Love
keep hitting
deep
those
threes.
I love the deep threes, the step back, half court shots. I love them.
The deeper the better.
Exactly. I got to want to do that twice a week, every week.
For the rest of your eternal life, Larson. So tear, pour, and live more and stay hydrated through the holidays with Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use code RAW at checkout. That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code RAW at liquidiv.com. All right, man, let's go ahead and move on with legit screw jobs in the history of wrestling. Of course, number 8, we all know very well, Larson. Sorry. Number 8.
8.
Hulk Hogan versus Jeff Jarrett. Bash at the Beach 2000. There was a whole Dark Side of the Ring episode on this one. Everybody involved has talked about it extensively. All the players. Vince Russo, Eric Bischoff, Hulk Hogan, Jeff Jarrett.
Yeah.
And there still, to this day, seems to be some unresolved conflicts in the story.
And I think depending on whose account you believe, the line where the work became a shoot may be a little fuzzy, although I think the Dark Side of the Ring maybe put an end to a lot of that talk. For a good number of years, people are like, the whole thing's a work, brother.
Oh, right, yeah.
The whole thing's a shoot.
Yeah.
You'd think if Hogan was going to go through the effort of suing Vince Russo in a court of law at great expense, it was obvious at some point it was all a shoot. But anyways, of course, Bash at the Beach 2000, this is the midst of Russo's, I believe, second tenure as the top lead booker in WCW after he had been asked to join committee, and then that didn't work, and he came back to work with Bischoff.
Yeah.
So the plan was for Jeff Jarrett to beat Hulk Hogan, middle of the card, Bash at the Beach 2000, and then Jarrett to face Booker T in the main event for the championship. Booker T would win. Hulk Hogan, he had the creative control clause in his contract, said, doesn't work for me, brother.
Doesn't work for me, brother.
So apparently there was all this back and forth. This is all like a lot of this was day of the show, it seemed like.
And
they
like
were
there was
Hogan's trailer, right?
Yeah, Hogan's trailer. There was also a suggestion that so Hogan gets like screwed or whatever, and then he comes back with the real world's championship like later on Nitro, and then him and like there's a battle over who's the real world champion.
Yeah, it was supposed to be like down the line, yeah. So what was ultimately agreed upon was that Jarrett would lay down for Hogan. Hogan would cut the promo, saying bullshit like this, Russo, that things are as they are in WCW. But then Russo came out and just buried Hulk Hogan. And apparently that was the aspect that was not planned.
Right.
Where he says, Hulk Hogan, you piece of shit.
You piece of shit.
Says you'll never see Hulk Hogan in WCW again.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
That is what led Hulk Hogan to sue Vince Russo.
Yeah. You got to figure if somebody's going to go through the trouble, the expense of suing another person, they at least think that they've got facts on their side.
Well, sometimes if you have a lot of money, you think
That's
you
actually
can
a good
introduce a
point.
lawsuit.
That's a good point.
And things
That's a
will go
good
your
point.
way.
Yeah, but okay, wouldn't it be wild if like Vince Russo, because like the idea is Vince Russo didn't tell Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
Does
yeah.
Vince? I forget, dude. Honestly, I forget. Does Vince Russo claim? What's Vince Russo's justification for doing that promo?
I think it's just that Hulk Hogan was a piece of shit and made it was hard to work with him.
But did Russo claim that Hogan knew he was going to do that
I don't
promo?
believe so. I don't believe so.
Okay.
Maybe I'm wrong
wow.
about that. Maybe I'm
Oh
wrong about
wow. Okay. Well,
that. I meant to rewatch the episode of Dark Side of the Ring because it's literally an hour about this whole angle.
Yeah. Right.
And
Yeah.
there's a lot.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of varying accounts.
Yeah. It's just liars lying to liars. That's all it is. You
Yeah.
know? But then there's also Jeff Jarrett there. He was caught in the
Jeff
middle.
Jarrett's there. Yeah.
Completely innocent.
So, of course, you got Bischoff backing up Hogan. Hogan, you can't put much stock in anything he says.
Bro, it's three. I mean, I don't know about Jarrett. I really don't. But it's three dudes. I'm sorry, man. Not a lot. In my estimation, not a lot of credibility between these three guys.
Nope. I'm not going to disagree with you.
Yeah, man. So, but no, I mean, that's, it's ground well covered. I'd rather talk about history going back further than 24 years. So let's go to number 7.
7.
Antonio Inoki versus Bob Backlund. So as many of you may or may not know, Antonio Inoki was, and they said this on WWE TV, although I still don't think they've actually added him to the...
No, he's not officially recognized as far as I'm aware as a WWF champion, no.
He's not in the lineage, but he did beat Bob Backlund for the WWF title back in 1979. And it just happened over 1 week. Bob Backlund goes to Japan, drops the title, and then a week later in Japan, wins it back from Inoki. So Inoki on Japanese TV, which obviously, back then there was no internet. So it's not like people would be like, oh my God, look what happened in Japan. No. It was like, what? What is that even? Nobody knows any of that shit. So like in Japanese TV, they'd be like, hey, look, Inoki was champion. And then over here in the U.S., it's like, I don't know, what, Bob Backlund went to Japan? What? That never happened. But here's the thing. Backlund dropped the title to Inoki with the agreement he'd win it back. That happened. But in the finish, which saw Tiger Jeet Singh interfering, causing Inoki to lose the title back to Backlund, Inoki gives the title back, however, in a double cross. After the match, this comes to you from the Wrestling Observer newsletter. After the match, WWF President Hisashi Shinma ruled that the match was a no contest and said that Inoki was still the champion. This, according to Dave Meltzer, was a setup by Inoki and Shinma, primarily because New Japan was scheduled to do a television taping about 7 weeks later in Madison Square Garden on a WWF show, and they wanted, for their own TV purposes and ratings, for Inoki to main event the Garden, where he'd drop the title to Backlund. Now, in the meantime, Vince McMahon Sr., not Jr., it was still another couple of years before Jr. bought the promotion, he was building up Bobby Duncum as the man of the month to work Backlund at the Madison Square Garden show. McMahon basically was like, none of that stuff in Japan ever happened, and he brought in Inoki to wrestle the Iron Sheik and build his match for the WWF World Martial Arts Championship.
Which was a title that was created a year prior, 1978.
And Inoki held it for like over 3,000 days.
Yeah.
And then one person won it from him for a month, and Inoki won it back, and then, like, I don't know.
There was, between 1978 and 1989, Inoki held the title, and then he lost it for 31 days, had it again, and then was deactivated by the end of 1989.
It is actually a beautiful title. You can see it on the Googles. It is a beautiful looking title.
Yeah, it's a really good looking belt.
Right, exactly. So instead they did that. And then for Japanese television, neither Backlund nor Duncum ever entered the ring for the belt, nor was Backlund introduced as champion. And he was then given the belt after beating Duncum. However, all the pre-match hype in the U.S. for the match had Backlund defending against Duncum. So the Japanese version of this event was something very different than the U.S. event, but it was the same event.
It was the same event. Yeah, They just changed it up for the presentation. Yeah, it's interesting that Inoki won the title from Backlund, never recognized, back in the day, 79, honestly, you mentioned no internet.
Right.
It's all word of mouth and newspapers where you get your information from.
Yeah.
And, I don't know if there's a situation imagine if something like this happened today, where someone won a title, and then at a live event, only to lose it back the following week, not mentioned on TV, and then for, say in this instance, WWE just kind of glossing over it and never recognizing it.
It'd be wild.
It'd be pretty crazy. Social media would not be happy about that.
Well, social media also changed everything, because there'd be like fan cams of it all over the place. It's like, imagine back in the day when on the house show circuit, DDP was joining the Wolfpack. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh my God, DDP joined the Wolfpack. And then what? And then on WCW programming, it's like, what happened? I thought he joined the Wolfpack. Why does he not have a Wolfpack shirt on?
What do you mean Wolfpack? I don't know anything about the Wolfpack.
I mean, you drop the bang on you instead.
Yeah.
No, this is just interesting stuff. Because they actually had a few matches in total between Inoki and Backlund. They had, even after this, they had, 3 matches after this, all in 1980. So, I don't know. It doesn't seem like, none of it seemed like contentious necessarily. Like, I don't know. Maybe Backlund was sitting there. I don't know how, versed Backlund was in Japanese. But, he gets the title back from Inoki. And then, the president comes out, Shinma comes out, and he says, hey, this is no contest. Inoki's still the champion. But he says it in, Japanese, and Backlund's like, what did he just say? He said, everybody gets free tacos. Everybody, because you won the title back, everybody in the arena gets free tacos for the day.
Yeah.
It's like basketball when somebody breaks a bunch of free throws.
Yeah. Or it's when the Kings used to play, when they weren't good, it's like if the Kings score over 120 points, everybody gets free
Bro, it was 100. It was 100.
Sorry, 100. I'm thinking in the 80, 86, 87 when, scoring was up. But later on it was 100. You get free Carl's Jr.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So maybe it was that he's like, okay, cool. And then he finds out, the Vince Sr.'s like, oh, damn, pal. What do you mean you lost the title to him? I just thought it was free tacos there, Vince Sr. Why are you calling me Vince Sr.? Anyways, let's go ahead and move on now to number 6. This is Ed the Strangler Lewis. Wait. Yeah. Ed Strangler Lewis versus Henri DeGlane.
Yeah.
The bite heard around the world.
So, as we mentioned, we're going to hear about Ed Strangler Lewis a lot.
Yeah.
He's involved in a lot of these type of matches. I guess it speaks to the general upheaval in the wrestling industry from the 1920s till probably the establishment of the NWA, I would think.
Yeah.
In 1948, I want to say.
Back when
that's when the first champion was crowned. So we covered this in an episode of, we brought back 10 for the win. We talked about this particular match. So it was in 1931. This is the original Montreal Screw-job. Happened in Montreal, although some people are convinced this was all a work. So the gist of this is as follows. Ed Strangler Lewis defending the title against Henri DeGlane, who is an Olympic gold medalist. Apparently a huge draw. So it's in the era of wrestling where championship matches were 2 out of 3 falls.
Yeah.
So Lewis... So after the second fall, they're tied 1-1. The story goes, between falls, there's an intermission. Mm-hmm. So the story goes that DeGlane goes into his locker room and either has somebody from his team, or he does it himself, bites himself near his armpit.
Yeah, right.
And so when he goes back out to the ring and Lewis is on the verge of winning the third and deciding fall, DeGlane starts screaming, and so the ref, sees blood streaming down his arm and his torso and sees bite marks, disqualifies Lewis, and declares Henri DeGlane the victor, and presents him with the title. And so there's a name here. Gosh, I didn't write down the first name, but Bowser. And it's a name that you see a lot. There's 3 names in terms of promoters that you see a lot in this era. It's this Bowser dude. It's Jack Curley, who we'll talk about a couple times later. And then it's the Gold Dust Trio guys. So I guess there's 5 names you're going to hear about a lot coming up. And at this point, in 1931, the Gold Dust Trio had kind of seen come and gone already. So Ed Lewis was not working with Toots Mondt or Billy Sandow anymore.
Right, yeah.
So it's just interesting to hear about promoters, rival promoters, trying to get a bit of one-upsmanship on the other to gain the title, have the champion in their territory, and therefore try to establish themselves as top promotion, whether it be in the country or in this instance, although I'm not exactly sure where Bowser was booking out of, but since the match is in Montreal, either the upper northeast of America or maybe including parts of Canada.
So Paul Bowser, and Paul Bowser. He was out of the Boston area.
Paul Bowser from Boston. Okay.
Yeah. So he originally was actually allied with Sandow and Lewis. Yeah. And then, I think I read
that's a common theme in this whole thing too. Yeah.
Dude, yeah. So like I had been reading it wasn't Death of the Territories, another book that I was reading very slowly. And the crazy thing about it is that this particular book, I forget what it is, but this particular book illustrated maybe it was in like the early chapters of the Death of the Territory. But my God, it was just screwed over, like person screwing over person screwing over. It was just everybody was screwing over everybody. And it was all in that, like, mainly going down there in the New York area, up in the Northeast area. And it was just like everybody trying to get control. There was like the World Heavyweight Championship, and eventually, dudes just came up with their own championship. Yep. And then they would have to, and all these like real grapplers would be like, oh, well, if I get paid enough by this guy, I'm just going to screw over this guy right here, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So looking ahead, Paul Bowser, this is not the first time that Paul Bowser, this instance, screwed over somebody associated with the Gold Dust Trio. Mm-hmm. We'll get to that later, though.
Yeah, we'll get to that later. We're done with this one. We did the baseball bat stuff.
Oh no, I didn't mention that. Yeah, so Lewis goes backstage to maybe throw hands with Paul Bowser, and then Bowser's got some bodyguards with baseball bats. And apparently Ed Lewis is like, I quit, I'm going to Europe.
Like, man, just go get your own guys with baseball bats, man. Escalate this shit. This is like the East Coast, West Coast rap beef, man. Anyways, let's go ahead and move on now to number 5. Rikidozan versus Masahiko Kimura. That's right. That's the Kimura, the guy who invented the Kimura.
The Kimura lock, yes.
That's right, yeah.
Of course, Rikidozan, a legend in Japanese pro wrestling, and I believe in the mid-50s, both Rikidozan and Kimura, massive stars in Japan when it came to pro wrestling. Mm-hmm. And so they had tagged together a few times, and I think they did a couple tours of the States as tag partners. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, it was decided that they were going to be booked in a match against each other. And so again, it's one of those situations where there's various accounts of what happened. Whether it was agreed upon to be a time limit draw, or if it was something Kimura proposed to Rikidozan without necessarily getting an answer. Mm-hmm. Nonetheless, there's video of this online. You can watch the end of this match online.
There's like AI enhanced video and like colorized video of this.
Yeah.
And allegedly Kimura went out on like the radio circuit to promote this, and he was kind of breaking kayfabe a little bit. Yeah. And so Rikidozan decided to shoot, and like midway through this match, you can actually see where this turns, because I think it's like a 15-minute deal or whatever.
Yeah.
And about 8 minutes deep, I want to say, it looks like Kimura throws a low blow kick towards Rikidozan, because you can see him sort of like,
but it's not like he really kind of like puts a whole lot of muscle into it. It just kind of tosses a kick out there and hits Rikidozan in maybe low. Yeah.
The match before this moment was boring as all fuck, because it's just a lot of what you said earlier, two dudes just rolling around. At this point, Rikidozan starts fucking lighting up Kimura, dude. He starts chopping him in the face, kicking him, just beating his ass, until eventually he gets him in the corner. Kimura keeps on looking at the ref like, broski, what's going on here? This guy's like shooting on me, brother. And ref's like, my name's Ben and I ain't in it. I'm here to count of 3. And so it doesn't even get to that, though, because Rikidozan finally has him backed up in the corner after lighting his ass up. Whoop-ah, just a massive shot to the head. Kimura collapses. He goes down hard.
Here's the thing about Kimura, too. Like, he is a legendary judoka.
Yeah, he had just stepped foot into pro wrestling.
Yeah.
But he was a legit fighter.
Yeah, he was a legit fighter before this. And so it's interesting to see those instincts not kick in. I guess he's been doing the pro wrestling thing long enough where, Rikidozan's lighting him up with slaps to the face, and he's like, do I fight back?
Yeah, right.
Is this part of the match?
Yeah, I probably
and
end
then
this pretty quickly. Yeah.
Just gets one in the face, and he's out. So got some quotes here from Pro Wrestling Story about the Kimura radio interview, I believe it was, where he said, we should determine who is the best wrestler in Japan. Ricky works only for show, and he'll be no match if I fight seriously.
Yeah, that's hella breaking kayfabe right there.
I know, it is. And so, of course, that got picked up by the newspapers. And so, I'm going to get the name wrong, and I apologize. Haruo Yamaguchi provided some quotes. I want to say he was another prominent wrestler at the time.
Okay.
I read a lot about this, and it's all kind of...
Yeah,
Steve, can you please check for me on that? He offered us some quotes about what happened afterwards. So after the match, the new champion was so excited that he disclosed their secret to the press in the dressing room. Rikidozan said Kimura had asked him to go Broadway to do a draw, and he claimed that he refused to follow such a predetermined path. To verify what he said was true, he handed Kimura's reputed letter to a reporter, and the next morning a picture of the letter appeared in a newspaper as irrefutable evidence. So apparently, also before the match, newspapers were running stories questioning the legitimacy of wrestling. This according to Pro Wrestling Stories. And while it was believed that the match was planned to be a work from the start, Rikidozan, whether it was the low blow, whether he was going in there with looking for a pretense to shoot on him, whatever the case may be after the fact, he was really leaning into the idea of trying to protect kayfabe.
Yeah.
And that these matches were legitimate fights and not predetermined.
Yeah. So Yamaguchi was a wrestling historian, not a wrestler himself, but he wrote several books about the subject.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I know there was someone I thought with a similar name that was scheduled to face Rikidozan after this match.
Oh, okay. All right. I forget, did this have anything to do with, was this alleged to have had anything to do with Rikidozan's death later on?
I think the deal was that Kimura was
affiliated.
He wrote a book where he just kind of said something along the lines of, I was not going to let this insult or slight pass, and then, but I think the person who actually stabbed Rikidozan wrote a book and kind of said no, he didn't. The Kimura didn't have any involvement in it.
Ah, okay, boy, that's pretty ballsy to be like, yeah, I had something to do with that shit.
Well, I don't think he straight up said that. I think it was just, I wasn't going to let something like that slide without repercussions. I think it was
that sounds so much like he's taking some responsibility for it.
You can infer what you want to from that.
Like, I prayed for this to happen, and it did. Whoa, buddy, just relax on that there. Anyways, but no, it's wild because you can see the aftermath of the actual match, and like Rikidozan's like, "Yeah, man, hey, you did a great job, Kimura," and Kimura's like, "Fuck you, dude!" Like he's shaking his hand, but you get this looks on his face, like, "The hell just happened out there?"
Yeah,
I didn't get that memo.
Yeah,
I got the wrong script, brother. Anyways, let's go ahead and move on to number 4. A lot of y'all know about this one. Wendi Richter versus the Spider Lady. I'm having a hard time saying that name right now.
That's all right. This was they talked about it in the Mr. McMahon documentary.
Correct. Yeah.
So as Dave Meltzer writes about it, this went down November 25th. That's something about November and WWE and Screwjobs. What's the deal?
Dude, man, that's a good point.
1985, by my math, 12 years before the Montreal Screwjob.
Yes.
The second one. So there's the...
which would have been 29 years ago today, right? I'm joking.
At Madison Square Garden, Wendi Richter was supposed to have a match with the Spider Lady, fabulous moolah.
Yes.
And before the match, Vince was trying to get her to sign a new contract that in that contract would apparently sign away all her merchandising rights. And again, according to Meltzer, he says here, Richter didn't refuse to sign the deal. She just wanted to read it before signing it because she was literally on her way to the ring. And Vince was like really leaning into it. It's like, you got to sign it. Sign the deal now. And she told him to wait till after the match so she could read it and actually know what she was signing. And that apparently led to Spider Lady, Fabulous Moolah, rolling up or getting Wendi in a pinning predicament, and the ref counted to 3. Even though Wendi Richter got her shoulder up at the end.
Yeah.
And then got the title from Wendi Richter. And Wendi never wrestled for WWF again after that.
No, nor should she have, because that's some bullshit right there.
That is some BS. You got that right.
Yeah. Yeah, this one's been fairly well covered. I think they covered this in the Moolah episode of Dark Side as well. But yeah. I mean, it's a bummer because given, that it was only 6 months earlier, not even that Wendi Richter was a featured part of WrestleMania there with Cyndi Lauper, and Vince trying to, just fucking screw over his wrestlers basically. This is some bullshit, and fuck Fabulous Moolah for going along with this shit too.
Oh yeah.
All right, let's go
say that for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, let's go way, way back in time now, man, with number 3. Ed Strangler Lewis versus Stanislaus Zbyszko.
So this was in 1922. This is their rematch. And it's, what's the site called? Our Fake History?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I'll put the link.
Channel.
Yeah, it's Our Fake History, yeah.
And it's a really well-produced 12-minute short about this particular match, about Ed Strangler Lewis, about the early days of the Gold Dust Trio and them wrestling control of the championship from Jack Curley and Stanislaus Zbyszko. So the deal was, this match was booked. Zbyszko had beaten Lewis for the title the year prior. And apparently Zbyszko had some issues with Jack Curley. Got a good chunk of change from the Gold Dust Trio to drop the title. And Jack Curley's chosen winner did not win. And now that the Gold Dust Trio had Ed Lewis as champion, they were the dominant promotion. And then for the next 3 years, pretty much, revolutionized the world of pro wrestling.
Do you think that this storyline here was what Mox is referencing? I've got the power. It's like the Gold Dust Trio.
Maybe.
Yeah, probably not. But yeah, and Tootsmont, is largely credited for a lot of stuff, including drop kicks,
suplexes,
worked
finishes.
Worked finishes is probably the biggest one. Because as you mentioned before, Ed Strangler Lewis, I think, was it Hackenschmidt? Who was it?
No, it was Ed Strangler Lewis wrestled a 5-hour match, yeah.
5-hour matches. I think they probably realized, people's asses are being numbed here.
Yeah, I watched another video just on or actually on the early days of the Gold Dust Trio, and it was a situation, where the audience was losing interest.
They're bored
in these extended matches. Like, they were still drawing good crowds. I think Gotch and Hackenschmidt, their second bout was at Comiskey Park in Chicago, the old baseball stadium.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, the Gold Dust Trio wanted to create a more exciting brand of professional wrestling. The matches weren't as long. The finishes were predetermined, worked out. And it didn't rely so much on actual wrestling skill, more so on entertainment.
I wonder, number one, back then, I wonder if these wrestling cards had other matches on them.
That's a good question. Imagine the day where you got a 5-match card and the shortest one goes an hour and a half.
That would suck.
You just be out there all day. You're out there, if it's an outdoor show, you're just in the sun all day.
And these matches back then were 2 out of 3 falls.
Yeah.
And so they have intermissions at the each fall.
So they can sell food and drink and whatnot. Yeah.
Like some fucking Stanislaus Zbyszko merch. They have that.
Him on the shirt. Posing like that. doing this pose.
Doing this shit.
Imagine it's like an indoor show. Even then, you got to sit in a smoke-filled arena for 12 hours.
Oh God, you go in clean as a whistle. You come out with like fucking lung cancer.
Yeah.
That's horrible.
Yeah. So I looked, and going back to the Rikidozan thing, the person he was supposed to face, I don't know if he did, after the Kimura match was Toshio Yamaguchi.
Oh, okay.
Same last name as the wrestler.
Okay.
So apologies for the confusion there.
Okay.
I just want to make sure we got that out there, that I wasn't completely imagining something because.
Gotcha.
Anyways, so this match was kind of important in terms of the direction of professional wrestling, kind of as we know it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was around this time also that they were busting out with like fakey fakes. Like we'll get to right now with number 2. Stanislaus Zbyszko versus Wayne Munn. Wayne Munn, not an actual grappler. He was a football player. Yep. Big dude. They called him Wayne Big Munn. And he had the championship. And so from the end of 1922, Goldust Trio set the rules. They, did what we just talked about.
They ran the professional wrestling business in America pretty much.
And and they sort of, said this is how it's going to go. And if promoters or wrestlers were like, no, then they were frozen out using Lewis, who that dude could, grapple. In 1925, Sandow had Lewis drop the championship to Big Wayne Munn. College football player, no wrestling skill, but he had a great look to him. Really, honestly, that's kind of all you need these days is a great look. Presentation is key. Tell some good stories. And this sounds like a good story. He was a great box office draw, Larson. So Sandow only let Munn wrestle with people he trusted to keep the title from being taken back by a skilled wrestler, by an actual wrestler. Now, Sandow trusted Stanislaus Zbyszko, but he was now cool again with Jack Curley, and so they paid Zbyszko to shoot on Munn, and they wrested the title back from the Goldust Trio, and that's who people follow. They follow wherever the title went. Like the public there, they didn't know what was going on. And then Zbyszko then dropped the title to Joe Stetcher in St. Louis.
Yeah, so this was kind of the beginning of the end for the Goldust Trio. This is from Ken Zimmerman Jr. had a great write-up about several double crosses and Screwjobs in the history of wrestling, and that's what this information is from. Again, the name Paul Bowser comes about being involved in this. I mean, you'd think if Ed Lewis was involved in a situation where Paul Bowser was involved in a double cross that led to his group losing the world title, you might think twice about having Paul Bowser promote a match of his when he's champion.
I mean, maybe, Paul Bowser was wearing a mustache and some glasses. And he was like, oh, no, I'm not Paul Bowser. You look like him.
Yeah, I don't know.
What's your
So
name?
apparently by 1928, Goldust Trio was no more. They had some financial disputes.
Ah, okay.
So their time on top was relatively short.
They were all blaming each other for trusting that Paul Bowser. I didn't want to do this. Yeah, you did. You told me you did. No, I didn't. Get away from me, Strangler.
So it just seems like this period in 1920s, like everybody was like, about to be double crossed, aren't I?
Dude, I'm telling you, man, this would make for a killer fucking
really
show.
would.
It would be a killer show. Like, dude, could you imagine if they took the aesthetic and just general vibe of the Nick, the Soderbergh show, and they did this? Oh my God, that'd be nuts.
Yeah,
that'd be so cool. Or even like Boardwalk Empire, get some Scorsese vibes to it. Anyways, let's move on to number 1. It's Montreal Screw-job.
Of course, the most famous one of them all. And the seismic shift that one caused in the wrestling business. It was after that Vince decided to craft the Mr. McMahon character. Mm-hmm. And his rivalry with Stone Cold throughout the Attitude Era was a story for years.
Here's the thing. Like, by the time 1997 came around, it ain't like it was back then. There was basically one promoter. That was Vince McMahon. And, like, nobody was screwing over anybody except for Vince screwing over his own wrestlers, but he wasn't doing it generally. He was just doing it contractually. He wasn't generally doing it like, in front of like the entire world on camera. And so when it comes to like actual screw jobs and pro wrestling matches, they were very few and far between. Like, you didn't see them very often. And so that's why this was so shocking. And it was the 1931 original Montreal Screwjob that gave Jim Cornette apparently the idea of how to put this down. However, in this case, no biting.
Yes.
So,
although there was punches thrown backstage.
There were legitimate punches thrown backstage. Yeah, not consensual punch. Because, like, the bite was a consensual. It was either he did it himself or he had his manager do it for him.
One of his dudes do it. But this situation,
that'd be weird. Like, we're sitting back there in the locker room like, hey, I got an idea. What? You know how, like, if somebody bites me, that person gets disqualified and I'm the champion? So, yeah. You want me to bite you?
You got that right.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to bite myself.
Well, I can't. Like, imagine if I had to try to.
I was thinking about myself because he's over here.
Well, I guess if you
take your hat off.
I mean, I could do it right there.
Yeah. Yeah. Might be more convincing if it's right here because the ref might be like,
yeah, exactly.
Oh, you can't reach there.
So that get it more in the pectoral muscle.
Especially when you're doing a lockup.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
but like to hide the bite mark when he comes out, Henri DeGlane, for the third fall, he has to like keep pressure on it.
Well, I think they said he was kind of doing this thing.
Oh, all right. Keeping pressure on it because, I mean, if you wanted to walk out with blood dripping down your midsection already, that's a tell. That's a giveaway.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, anyways, yeah, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, no bite marks, but some bruised egos for sure. We all know the story behind that one. It's been told a million trillion times. Yes. So, of course, that's number one because it's the most recent one.
Yes. Well, it's also, like a lot of these, there's no evidence that they happen beyond just people's anecdotes regarding them actually happening, like the old ones. Like apparently there was a radio broadcast of Zbyszko and Ed Lewis.
Oh, interesting.
But obviously the ones in the 1920s and 30s, there's not really a whole lot. It's just eyewitness accounts for the most part. So it's very rare that these incidents are photographed.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Much less take place at a major pay-per-view for the largest wrestling promotion in the world.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You know, it just doesn't happen. That's why at the time it was so shocking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, it's like we all knew this was predetermined stuff, but to have the curtain pulled down right there live on pay-per-view.
Yeah.
Just didn't happen.
It's funny because, like, when you mention how these things are recorded in history, don't you think this is probably just sort of scratching the surface in terms of what was really going on back then? There were probably so many more screw jobs in the ring because people didn't trust each other. Who know? Like most of the, like grappler versus grappler. Hey, I'm working for this guy, but maybe I'm working for this guy and that guy, and he, like. That shit probably happened all the time.
It's like my loyalty is determined by who gives me the most money before I step foot in that ring.
Right, exactly right.
You know, and if you're willing to pay me more, then yeah, I'll shoot on this guy and win the title for you. Why not?
Yeah, right. I'll break his leg, sure.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, we assume that wrestling, while we've been watching it, has been a very cutthroat business. Industry full of sharks.
Mm-hmm.
You got to imagine the 1920s.
Mm-hmm.
Just all sharks.
Yeah, exactly. Especially when you bring betting into it. You
got betting into it. You guys who are legitimate grapplers.
Yeah, yeah.
Not I'm not going to diminish the training of professional wrestlers, but people who are trained grapplers who can break legs legitimately.
Like, dude, you put in Ed Strangler Lewis in his prime against Von Wagner. I think Ed Lewis probably wins that match.
Yeah. It might take 5 hours, but he'll win.
Yeah. Anyways, let us know what you guys think about these legitimate screw jobs in the history of pro wrestling. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We appreciate it. Till next time, we'll see you guys around.
Goodbye.